Hey you, it's Rachael O'Meara. I'm host of the Pausecast, and I'm so glad that you are here. We are discussing tips and proven strategies in the world of emotional intelligence so that you can rise to your next level of leadership without the overwhelm. I'm also the author of the book Pause, Harnessing the Life-Changing Power of Giving Yourself a Break, based on my burnout of Google and all the things that I've learned since that are really in this realm of neuroscience, psychology, and emotional intelligence. If you're interested to download my free guidebook for how to get out of overwhelm, I invite you to do that at rachelomeara.com/guidebook. Just so excited. Let's just start and dive in. Welcome and thank you for being here today on this episode of the Pausecast. Today I'm here with a dear friend and former Googler person, teammate from myself, Sandra Ma. Hi, Sandra. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I know. I'm so excited we're doing this. And tell us where you are in the world. What's happening in your world?
I am in the greater Boston area, but pretty close to New Hampshire.
Today we're going to get into your leadership journey. So would you mind, for the audience, sharing a little bit about who you are and what your role and how you came to be in tech?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm still figuring out. I like to tell people, like, I'm still figuring out what I want to be when I grow up, but it all started way back when in West Virginia. I was born there. I'm not to start that early, but that is a little known fact. I was born
We
in
can
West
totally start there.
when people don't really expect. But yeah, growing up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania after that, I really had no idea what to do. And I ended up studying finance in school. And after college, I ended up in investment banking because they told me this is what you do to be gainfully employed and make a living and have financial stability. And I didn't enjoy it. Is the short of it. And I think during that time, it was, the economy was tanking, things weren't going very well. And so that type of environment, even without the economy going well, is really tough. I was yelled at every other day, which funny enough, I think nowadays, if people get yelled at work, they're like, I need to go to HR. Now, but back then I didn't even think about it. You just kind of suck it up and go with it. And we're like, this is my life now. But yeah, eventually after a couple years in that, I ended up getting laid off. And after many months of job searching, which was a blow to the ego, I think, especially first job out of college. You have all these student loans. I was living in New York City, right? You're like, what am I going to do with my life? I ended up finding a job at MTV Networks, of all places, which is this total 180 from banking world, I think, like in terms of environment, culture, and everything. Loved it. And, I probably had the least cool job at MTV Networks, though. I was number crunching. So slinging Excel spreadsheets. And I just remember one day we worked on the 48th floor and there was this conference room where the execs were having a meeting. And this was the age of when Jersey Shore was a really popular show. Do you remember Jersey Shore, Rachel?
I do. Unfortunately, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I haven't even watched it. But Jersey Shore was huge at that point. And I remember Snooki, for those who don't know, she was one of the main characters in Jersey Shore, was meeting with the execs. And I'm sitting there in my cubicle just thinking, everyone's lied to me. And what I mean by that was that, I worked hard, I got the good grades, I went to the good school, and here I am in my little cubicle, just deep in Excel spreadsheets, and there's Snooki talking to execs, and so I'm wondering where I've gone wrong and what I should have done.
This happened.
Yeah, exactly. It's like one of many existential crises, and so, it was all good fun, though. I think had a great experience there, but then eventually went to Google where we met and had a slew of different jobs there, analytical, some internal product, some go-to market. And, after many years, I think eventually I had that feeling of I need something more. I need to have more impact. And I think when you're in the behemoth of Google, sometimes it's hard to feel like, you're actually making a difference. And of course, it's team dependent, but I think for me, it was time for a change. And so, I left the nurturing arms of Google and the good health benefits and the free food, which I still look fondly upon.
Those wonderful things.
And then after being kind of in the microcosm of Google for so long, I started going out there and networking, and I was like, I don't really even know what's out there. And then I kind of stumbled upon startups and I was like, I don't really know what this is, but it sounds fun to start something up. That sounds cool to be a part of. And so then I ended up joining 3 different startups over a few years, all leading product management teams. And so all different industries as well. One was, AI, doing all the AI things before AI has become what it was today, really. So more traditional machine learning models, doing e-commerce, also joined a fintech startup. And all while going through these experiences over all the years, starting at the beginning, I think I started to realize a few things. And one is just, I just felt like this feeling of Groundhog Day where everything was the same every single day, even though I had different roles and I had different teams and different industries and all these things. I realized it's the same thing in that every team you're on, it comes down to the people and who you work with. And can you get along? Can you collaborate, right? It's no different than, we always talk to my 9-year-old son, Josh, and we're just like, he'll complain about something that happened at school. And we're like, this is adult life. There's nothing that's different about this, right? Adults are just taxpaying children. I think then I started to do the math too. I always thought I'd just climb the corporate ladder and do this until I retire. And then I'm like, how many years do I have until I retire? A lot was the answer I came to. And to feel this kind of complacent existential feeling was like we can't just keep living our lives like this. And so then, my co-founder Rick and also partner in life, he has an opposite background to me, more on the creative and structural design, graphic design, learning development, and yet same exact conclusions of the little frustrations, inefficiencies at work, the people not getting along, same problems happening. And so we're like, we can change this. Talking to so many friends and family and colleagues, they all had similar stories and complaints of just not feeling great about their work lives. And we're like, we can do better. We can have a higher bar, and that's why we ended up starting Jovial, where I am now. And so Jovial is all about, can we create more joyful, impactful workplaces? And we believe we can. And a lot of that comes from thinking about, can we just put in the standards and processes for people to do their best work, right? And so oftentimes when people think about us, right, so we're essentially like consulting professional services, but a lot of times people kind of lump us with HR people, which makes sense, right? Because we care about people. But ultimately, from Rick and I's background, we've touched nearly every type of role and function within a company. And so we're more operators and we think about things more from like a business and operational perspective of like, how do we solve problems and change things to make things kind of effortless for people to do
Yeah.
their jobs, but with a heavy emphasis on people and caring about the people, because fundamentally, if you don't focus on the people, we really don't have anything. And so with our clients, we're really figuring out like what's getting in the way. And at the end of the day, we want to create the conditions for people to feel good about their jobs so they can actually focus on them and have that sense of purpose and enjoyment in everything they do.
Very powerful. So you are the cross between operators, and Rick is your husband, right? So you're in business with your partner, which is also another world of adventure. And so you're not HR, but you bridge that gap. It's to me, you bridge that gap of how am I an operator and bring in the culture and fit for people to be really happy and successful.
Yeah,
I think of that. Do you agree?
totally. Yeah. And I think it's unusual, I think, like for someone like me coming from more product tech, engineering world to move more into a space that's seen as something that's more HR people focused. But coming with that lens of like, yeah, I do understand the technology. I do understand how things work. And we can actually get into more of the details.
How did you know when to leave? When you left the big tech job and went to your startup, did you know that you were going to do that? And were you just ready to go? I'm curious because I think a lot of people are, if you do have a side hustle or you're thinking about that, it's like, how do you take the leap of faith?
I had no idea, and I never thought I would ever start my own business. Like, if you asked me even a few years
Sure.
ago if I would do this, I would be like, absolutely not. I'm risk averse. And I was never, this is not something that was ever thought about growing up, right? It was really like, get your day job, pay the bills, and just do that until you retire. But then I think one day after going through all this, and I think the whole reflection on like, there's so many more years of work left, and thinking about how you're constantly working in support of someone else's dream and someone else's goals as opposed to your own. I think that's kind of really what pushed me to thinking about like, hey, I see so many other people doing their startups, doing their businesses, doing whatever that they're trying to do. Why can't I do that, right? Why can't I believe in myself and bet on myself as opposed to, sitting back and accepting something that's really not as desirable for me and for my life?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's interesting. Great to hear your journey there and what you didn't expect. I feel like most of us are kind of that way. I didn't expect to write a book and I wrote a book. So if we are open to what is possible and just thinking about what works for you. You love product. You love helping teams succeed. You love being in it and an operator with that go to market world that you were in and product time. So kudos for launching that and moving into that space because I think it takes a lot of courage too. And you moved into it. And I'm really excited now that you get to live in that space with all the acumen and background that you have. What would you say is a moment that you're especially proud of in your career, this whole trajectory?
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like when I think about my career, I never really think about much of it as like wins, right? Or like, I'm not like, oh yeah, like, I got that award or whatever it is. And part of that is probably just like upbringing, right? Like traditional Asian upbringing. It's like there's this expectation that you just need to do well in whatever it is. And it's not something that you necessarily celebrate. But, with that said, I think it is good to celebrate. And I think just to what we were talking about in terms of what I'm most proud of is probably having that courage, like you said, to step away from the status quo, step away from
Right.
climbing the corporate ladder and try to redesign my life and build Jovial. Because again, like I don't think I would have ever done that if, without the reflection and kind of like pep talking myself and talking to others and feeling that validation that like, yeah, I can do this. And it doesn't have to be just watching everybody else go along and try these things. Like, I can try to be more active in my own life.
Yeah. And you told me once about the origin of the name Jovial. I don't remember the exact details. Is there some kind of a combination of words for that?
No, no, I think it was really like Rick and I were just spitballing, honestly. And I think the whole kind of feeling that we wanted to get was hey, we just want people to feel positive and joyful at work. And I think jovial was one of those words that wasn't something that's, cliche that everyone uses all the time, but it kind of just rolled off the
Yeah.
tongue. And when you hear it, people are like, oh, yeah, that sounds
Okay, I got to tell you something kind of well, it's revealing from my world. So I love that I do think of joy when I hear that name and I sometimes pull angel cards for people. And so I thought I'll pull a card right now and see what comes up. And look what came up, joy.
really.
You
Who's
were
that?
saying that, I literally pulled it, and this is something I do with my clients sometimes, it just depends on what we're doing or if there's interest, and there's clearly bringing joy, I think, to the workplace because a lot of times we're such in the muck in the trenches of the operations that it's really hard to follow the joy sometimes, but when we do, there's opportunity to be your best self, show up in great ways where it emanates and people follow you because there's joy, so kudos. I love the name. I never think I really told you that, but I'm excited for
Thank you.
the name there because you really are emanating that from what you're doing. So we talked about the win and getting out there. What about a mistake or a challenge that you've learned the most from? What would you say?
Yeah, I would say, a few years ago when I was job searching and interviewing, I managed to get an interview for an up and coming company. They were really, touted as the next big thing. And it was one of those opportunities where people were like, Sandra, if you don't take this, that would be ridiculous. Like it's a no brainer. And so I had my interviews, team seemed nice. And, upon reflecting though, I ended up joining the company. I thought about it, I was like, the interviews were pretty surface level, and I kind of went along with it, just because everyone had been kind of building the story up so much about the company. But looking back, I should have asked more questions because once I was there, it was that feeling of, I don't feel I fit in. This isn't aligned with my values and isn't the role that I was expecting and really just like not as advertised, right? And part of it is my own fault of like I didn't ask enough questions and I was kind of following along with the hype, which is the biggest thing I think about every day now of like I had to think for myself. I can't just follow along with what everyone else is saying, what the trends are, all the AI things, right? And it's more about let's ask the right questions, let's be critical, let's evaluate what's right for me and the team.
Yeah, it sounds like there was an element of inner knowing and trust that kind of told you like a flow flag, like, hey, maybe this isn't the job for you. And you listened to it.
Yeah, I mean, a little too late, but I think now that I know, like anytime people are asking me for a career advice or mentorship, I'm always like, the interview is not just for the employer, it's for you. It's for you to interview them and make sure you're asking, as many questions as you can to make sure you get the truth.
You're interviewing
It's
them.
like everyone is always like, oh yes, we have all these values, like we have a great culture. But once you get to the specifics, then you can start to uncover what's actually going on
Yeah.
in.
And you found out and you left. Good
Yeah.
for
Sometimes you gotta learn the hard way.
I
Sometimes
think
you
that's important though. I really want to underline that because sometimes we go with the flow, like it'll be fine, it'll work out. But if you get those flags, you got to pay attention. And usually when we do, it really, really serves yourself more than first and foremost, which is what matters. And you found new roles, you went on and did new things. So it just goes to show it's listening to yourself really matters.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be learned from everything. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the big things I always think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm curious too for you, what are some of the most like the best professional investments, Sandra, that you've made in the past couple of years for you?
I would say in the last corporate job I had, I did end up investing in getting an executive coach for about 6 months, and I'd never done that before. And for me, I think what was really helpful in getting that executive coach, two things. One was it was really helpful to just have someone neutral, but who had this breadth of experience, talk to so many executives, and really just like validating my own expertise and credibility. Because I think for myself, sometimes I'm like, I don't know anything. And then it was nice to talk to this coach who, in our conversations, I was like, I actually do know things. Like I actually do have experience. I do have something of value to add. And so I think that was a great just validation. And I think the second piece was more of having again that like neutral thought partner to brainstorm and ideate and think about, all right, here are the different paths I'm trying to think about. Like what's the best approach and how do you think about difficult conversations that trying to have or situations that you come across was super helpful as opposed to me having conversation in my own head, which doesn't always end well.
It's hard. And a lot of times we need that third party to validate, like you said, brainstorm, find support, get outside of our own way sometimes. So love that you did that for yourself. Way to go.
Absolutely. And I think like separate from that, as far as like professional investment is again just coming back to investing in myself and Jovial because we don't have any outside support. It's really us investing in ourselves and taking the time and the money to put towards it. And I think, it's again, I'm like risk averse and I think it's in a way it can be a risky thing. But I think like going through this experience, I would say I've probably learned more throughout these last couple years than I have in many of my corporate jobs combined, right? Because you have to do so many things, and it's like it all is reliant on yourself and my partner Rick. But it's been, I think, very fulfilling in that way.
Yeah, that's really helpful to hear and a good reminder because even if we're risk averse, we can get outside our comfort zone, is what I'm hearing. And then it's like you're a rocket ship, learning and growing. And then additionally, investing in yourself, you're Xing what you're getting because you're just that much more supported and learning as well. So I like that part of it, what you're sharing there too. How about, let's see, from what's happening now, looking back, what do you think has been going really well for you lately? Maybe that's personal or professional. And what's one thing that feels more like a challenge for you?
Yeah, well, I think what's going well now, just personally, we recently moved into a new home in the summer. And so we had been renting for so long. So I think it was like one of those big milestones to finally become a homeowner. Like I'm an adult now doing adulting things. And so it's also just nice to set roots down and really be able to make the home our own, which has been fun. So it adds some nice stability that I think, we've been looking for. And then on the part that's challenging, I would say, when I think about Jovial, I sometimes think like I'm stuck in the Matrix. And Rachel, you can tell me you get this feeling
We're
too. Yeah, like, I feel like in the matrix, in the way that like we are all just stuck in these like corporate societal norms and in the status quo of this is just the way things are, right? Like this is how corporate world works. And we have to speak in this way, right? Like I think if I hear corporate jargon or business speak, like I'm like, I can't anymore. But that's kind of like what we've been conditioned and learned to do from a young age, right? Like sometimes I even and hear my son from things he's learned in school or from others too. And I'm like, I grapple with, can I combat that with Jovial? Like, can I make a meaningful change or impact from this kind of mentality that we've all been conditioned to have for a long time, right? It takes something, humans take a long time to change, right? It's like probably one of the fundamental things that we hate doing is changing. And so that's one thing I think about is like, people believe in Jovial and the mission, but is it enough, right, to make the change? That's the part that I constantly thinking about. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see.
You're in it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's okay. That's a part of the process, I think, is that existential angst of like, well, what is this? How is it going? What will I do? And it's okay. It's just part of being human, I think, too. So
Exactly.
it's all good. And you're doing it, I think, is part of that awesomeness of it, too. You've done that in your career as well as now. And it's really hard to keep all the balls in the air, or even pause and catch your breath sometimes. So I'm curious, does that resonate with you at all? And what would be the guidance would you give to someone if they felt like they just aren't able to catch their breath, feeling like they're just in it like all the time?
Yeah, no, I definitely resonate that. I would say if you were to ask me this years ago when I was in corporate world, I especially would resonate because I think it was like, I felt like I was slogging it day in and day out, waking up, scrolling through my meeting calendar of back-to-back meetings, and then juggling home life, childcare, all the things. And I felt like I never had the time to do anything for myself, which was really hard. And then even a couple years after leaving corporate, I feel like it took me that amount of time to actually get over having the Sunday scaries. So even after I was like, I don't have to wake up on Monday and go to a bunch of meetings I don't care about. And yet your nervous system doesn't forget. So Sunday, I just felt myself extra grumpy and angsty. I'm like, what's going on? But it took years of kind of like realizing that, reflecting. And I would say now I am more like go with the flow. I'm like, it's all good, just like you were saying, like it's going to be fine. I'm going to figure it out. And I think the beauty of now being my own boss is that I can design how I want to work and on my own terms, which is very freeing, I would say. And so, of course, there's still a lot of stress of like having your own business is hugely stressful. But I think I manage it in the way that I want to, and that in itself just takes a lot of the burden off from prior life.
Words of wisdom. Thank you. I like that. You know it's coming and you're going to get through it.
Yeah.
Lean in. Well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you for all the questions. Is there anything else you'd want to add? Any last words you'd like to share? And how can people find you out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, in terms of finding me, find me on the internet, on LinkedIn, however, always happy to chat with people and get to know folks. And then in terms of, I guess, last words, I would just say, I always think about this is trying to appreciate the significance of our insignificance. And for me, it just helps frame things where sometimes I say to people like, oh, we're just like a speck in this whole amazing world. And they're like, Sandra, that's so depressing. And I'm like, I don't mean it in a depressing way. I mean it in more of a, let's just have more perspective of like, we get so stressed and kind of make ourselves suffer thinking about, oh, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm late for this thing. I got this big presentation, or I was in this argument with, my partner or coworker, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that serious. And so that always helps me just kind of reset and be a bit more, calm and at peace.
Yes, the tiny blue dot that we are on. Awesome. Sandra, thank you so much for being here and sharing more of your journey today. I'm so grateful that we know each other and that you're able to come on and share your wonderful words of wisdom and your journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel. It's been so much fun.
Thanks for listening today to the Pausecast. You rock. If you haven't already, please subscribe, rate us, leave your review. I'd love to hear from you and help us get the word out to all of those who are in search of wanting to get out of overwhelm and rise to their next level of leadership. If you think that you might benefit from these tools or know anyone else who would, just invite them to join us. Pausecast.